Adults don't realize that gifted students do encounter quite a few problems in school. Just because they're highly intelligent does not mean that the school environment is going to come easily to them. All of these issues actually apply to every child within a classroom. However, we're going to focus on these issues in particularly for the gifted student. Typically throughout history, the typical gifted student is going to have boredom. And it's because we're too busy trying to cater to the needs of all students. And a lot of attention is put toward helping those that are slower. Therefore, the gifted child is left with very little to do, or they have their learning needs completely unmet. What's frustrating about this is they reach a point of boredom because they quickly finish their work and have nothing else to do. So we want to realize also that these gifted children have very long attention spans. However, that being said, they do not need 15-20 minutes to learn a basic concept. They need to be able to have things that are more in depth. So really expecting a child that is gifted to spend quite a bit of time on a basic concept is going to be overwhelming for them. Additionally, they really have a lack of maturity, but they have really high abilities. And this is related to that boredom. And it's not surprising that they may have great maturity and ability to pay attention in class. However, it may be shocking that they don't have great mathematical reasoning skills, or maybe they're not really good at one or two other things. And so we have to adapt those expectations according to the topic. What is it that the child is gifted in? We want to make sure that they are completely catered to in the area that they need. We want to also make sure that they are getting the appropriate skill level information. Otherwise, they're going to lose interest and they may actually not just stop paying attention, but completely act out. We also need to look at how some of our teachers are simply untrained. And this is not their fault. It simply is that they do not understand and they don't realize that not only is there a giftedness, but there are different levels of giftedness. We can see that in a child that may be 13, 14 years old and in high school compared to the child that is gifted but may not even require a single grade skip. We fail to really understand that there are really advanced behaviors by some of these children. So we want to look at how we can change that. Well, first we need to make sure that we realize that there really are children that are very, very bright. And even though a parent doesn't complain or someone doesn't complain, doesn't mean that we should go along with it and not take care of the needs of that child. Just because a child is being submissive doesn't mean that the child does not need to have the aids and the information that they deserve. We also want to make sure that we give them the needs that they need, that we make the adjustments, and it doesn't really need to require extra money or specialists or even extra work for the teacher. When these things are not met and their needs are not met, we run into some behavioral problems. And the student may not cooperate with what is required of the school or the teacher or even the curriculum. And teachers complain about several behaviors that go along with gifted children, like talkativeness, they're not paying attention, they're distracting, they're being disruptive, and they're really being too restrictive. And especially you're going to see these disruptive behaviors more in boys than in girls. So we want to realize that some of these expectations we have for good behavior, such as being quiet, remaining seated, no fooling around, etc., that these are great expectations, but it's going to work most particularly well when we're dealing with a child that is having their needs met. We need to remember that we need to be flexible and tolerant and also keep them happily busy and learning. We also realize that sometimes there simply are too many restrictions or rules along with homework or classroom work. For instance, a good one is showing your work. Dealing with a student recently who is taking a calculus course in high school as a sophomore, a 14-year-old sophomore. She stated that her teacher requires her to write out every single step. She said that she missed the entire problem one time because she did not put out how 2 times 2 equaled 4 as one of her steps. We need to realize that these gifted children may not always show all of their work, but that does not mean that they are unintelligent or that they don't know how to do it. It simply is a step that they just don't see necessary. And we need to be a little more adaptable. We don't need to count an entire problem wrong. And instead we want to say, look, this is what I'd like for you to show, and this is why I want you to show it. Make sure that the child knows why expectations are made. And if they have problems with some of the expectations, maybe some kind of arrangement needs to be made where you can adjust the expectations for the child. Next, we want to look at some personality conflicts. And obviously, as with any other profession, there's going to be a personality conflict, or there may be a personality conflict between a teacher or a student. Not only a personality conflict, but we may also find a learning style problem. For instance, if you have a visual teacher that is trying to teach a kinesthetic learner, that may not work out well. So we want to pay attention to that and see how we can really approach learning and what is going to work best for our gifted children.